Today on the 2020 Awards, we've asked our guest director, John Jeffcoat, to share with us what he believes is an example of great directing. John asked us to take a look at Wings of Desire.
Als das Kind Kind war, ging es mit hängenden Armen, wollte der Bach sei ein Fluss, der Fluss sei ein Strom und diese Pfütze das Meer. Als das Kind Kind war, wusste es nicht, dass es Kind war. Alles war ihm beseelt und alle Seelen waren eins.
Wings of Desire was released in 1987. The film follows two angels played by Bruno Ganz and Otto Sander who watch over the citizens of Berlin. While they have the gift of immortality, they long to experience human senses, smell, taste, and touch. Ganz falls in love with a circus performer played by Solveig Dommartin, and he eventually sheds his wings to become a human where Dommartin falls in love with him. The film was directed by Wim Wenders and the screenplay by Peter Handke. My guest today is filmmaker John Jeffcoat. John is the director of Bingo the Documentary and the indie comedy Outsourced. He's currently wrapping up post on his next feature film, Big in Japan. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for having me.
Wings of Desire.
Well, it's funny, now that I hear you introduce me and you say an example of great directing, and I think in my head I started thinking about films, and then I started thinking about films that really influenced me, directors who really influenced me. And then there's so many films, and it's really hard to pick one. And Wings of Desire is I picked because it's one of those. It was one of those films that was a very pivotal film for me for the time I saw it, and it was the film that was sort of a gateway to these very different kinds of films that I'd been watching. It was very different from Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars and
a bit,
Sweet and 16 Candles and. When I first saw it, I was living in New York, just outside of Manhattan, and I was going to go on a date with this girl, and I was trying to figure out a movie to watch, and I'm searching everything, trying to find a cool movie. Didn't know what to do, and I saw an ad in the New York Times, and it said celebrating its 2-year run at Bleecker Street Cinema. So I thought, okay, well, this has got to be a good movie if it's been playing there at this theater that I think only shows one movie for 2 years. Yeah. And so anyway, we went to go see it. And first, I'd never been to Bleecker Street Cinema before, and it's this tiny. You walk in there, and I mean, there's like 14 seats. It was tiny, and it was.
I know it's small, but is it?
In my memory, it's 14 seats. Yeah. It may have been, but I can't imagine more than 25. I mean, It was really intimate. And so that was kind of a shocker, when we. Well,
that's why it took 2 years, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
but then we sat down, and then it starts, and of course it's all black and white, and it's in German, and the subtitle. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a really interesting date, And it is definitely, it's these. I didn't really know anything about it. I hadn't read a synopsis or anything. I saw the picture, the poster looked kind of cool, and it was a really interesting process where I went from being, nervous about bringing this girl to this date and what's she going to think, but then after a while, when I started to realize, like, what the heck are these people in overcoats doing? And then these are angels, and they're hearing thoughts, and then it totally took over, and I was just in this bizarre film that all this, and then Peter Falk shows up, and he's, what is going on? And it turns color and black and white, and then they're in this circus, and I remember coming out of that movie, and it was a revelation to me, like where you could go with cinema, and that was really important for me at the time, because that opened the doors to all different kinds of art films that I had never seen before. Right. And Wim Wenders definitely has been. Also, I went and tried to watch more of his films. Then when I was in college, I, of course, watched just everything I could possibly find of his. And there's something about his directing style and about his relationship with his cinematographer. His movies almost always have just tremendous, beautiful cinematography. The
cinematography in this film is stunning.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I was stuck a little bit because I was thinking it should be a Wenders film, because there's something about his films that's kind of hard to pinpoint, but something that I really can connect with. And I almost thought of Paris, Texas, another movie I was going to suggest, and then Kings of the Road, which is one of my favorites. And then also Until the End of the World, which I ended up seeing a 6-hour version of when he was in town.
Oh my God!
Which I thought was just absolutely amazing. And actually, there's a lot of characters from Wings of Desire that ended up being in Until the End of the World, which was kind of...
Same characters?
Yeah, there were.
Really?
There's a friend in the circus of Solveig Dommartin called Chico, and he's Chico in Until the End of the World.
Oh, yeah.
And even I noticed in the library, there's one of the angels was leaning over someone in the book, and in the book it's End of the World. The book is called End of the World. I know that Until the End of the World was a project he'd been working on for a long time, but my guess is he was working on it while he did Wings of Desire, because there's a lot of similar characters. There was someone else that showed up too that was in it. I can't remember who it was, but so it was a really important for me to. It was a really important film, as far as developing my kind of interest in cinema, and watching it. I don't know when the last time I saw it was. Since then, I think I maybe tried to watch it a few times, but it's a little bit. It's obviously it's heavy getting into. It's and and watching it now, it's like I think the first 20 minutes when I first saw it, I don't think any of the dialogue, any of this, subtitled dialogue or narration that's happening really stuck in my head. So I was almost like watching it for the first time and really understanding what this poetry or what these thoughts were actually talking about.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting watching it again and kind of paying more attention to that. And again, I think also it's subtitled, and the cinematography is so amazing. It's like I'm not really watching the subtitles, just watching and taking in the mood that he's creating, which was wonderful. One thing that stuck me this time around was like, do people in Germany always have these such poetic thoughts?
That's what I was going to say. It's just like every single person in this movie is a poet or a philosopher, And it's like there's no one who's just like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. I wonder what.
Well, except for Peter Falk, which
that's right.
It's like, oh, this drawing sucks. It's like I want a hamburger, It's like, and it was like there was a little girl who was just on the bus, I think, who was like, I'm bored. I want to do something, But everyone was thinking these really deep, poetic thoughts, and it just felt really, heavy-handed.
Yeah. And I just want to see like one guy notice a girl walking past and go like, oh man.
Yeah.
I do that. Something, just something that's like, please just be a human being. Don't be a philosopher king.
And I mean, obviously that's Peter Handke, the two of them are credited as writing the screenplay, but that's a lot of his, his poetry in there. And I definitely could have done with less of that. But it was, you sort of adapt to it, but that was definitely in my head, like, wow, people are really poetic, and then, and I remember when I first saw
and full of ennui, despondent.
There was a couple scenes that I remember thinking just went on really long when I first saw it, and it was one of them was the old man trying to find Potsdamer Platz, and then this really, really long speech that's given in the very end at the Nick Cave show. Which I remember just seeming just way more than needed to be said. But even still, it was like, it was like when Bruno Ganz first sees Solveig, the aerialist in the circus, it's just so beautiful. And she's in this cat suit and they're spinning her around, and it really is magical. And
she's wearing wings.
She's wearing wings in then later she goes, but first she's in like a black cat suit with a tail and stuff on it, and she's spinning around. That was the first time I think he sees it. And then she comes back to look at her again, and she's with an angel. She's dressed as the angel.
You know what? I missed it the first time because I was reading the subtitles. And I'm feeling depressed about my life.
And then there's a flash of, I think when she's an angel, there's the flash of color, and And I did start thinking about, how do you direct this movie? What does the screenplay look like with all this internal monologues and how did he put this together? And really kind of curious because there's a lot of interesting transitional elements too, and just so much beautiful visual imagery. And I know from when Wim Wenders came to town, they did a whole retrospective at UW, and I saw like everything he's done, including his short films, where he's just falls in love with these single takes. And his first couple films are literally like he just would set up the camera and run the reel out,
right?
And he just could never get to edit it. He never could bring himself to edit it because he always was anticipating if there was going to be another car coming around or what was going to happen in that frame. And you can still see some of that playing into his filmmaking. There's really long. I'm always hesitant to recommend Wim Wenders films because they're so long, but at the same time, it's like,
I have to say, I'm glad you didn't pick Until the End of the World. Even the 3-hour version, I'm just like, God, please, something happen in this movie.
Well, the funny thing is, watching the 6-hour version, so many things that didn't make sense made so much more sense. And
I believe that to be true.
So they pulled so much out of it. But again, it was like, yeah, I don't know. I loved so many of the concepts and so much of what was going on. But yeah, it was something. Felt really off. And then when the 6-hour version came out, it was like 3 different movies.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, and then when I was in film, I didn't go to a film school, I went to small liberal arts college, and I was a cinema major there. But we watched all the your basic film school films and all the film directors and the German New Wave, the French New Wave, and the neorealists and all this stuff. And I watched a lot of other like Tarkovsky. To me, is just he's really long too. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, I connected with Wenders more than I did with him. Wenders had a human side to his films that a lot of the other sort of art house directors I feel like didn't have.
Right.
And maybe they're more intellectual, but
which is
less
ironic
emotional.
since he's German.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah. And just look at other Germans too.
Yeah.
I mean, of the new German cinema, he stood out way apart from his contemporaries who were Fassbinder and Herzog, who made very different kinds of films. And I immediately took to his stuff, these slow paced films, and Kings of the Road still remains one of my favorite visually. It's just
that's the one that's about making a film, right?
It's about these this projector repairman, these two guys aimlessly traveling around the German countryside in this big old van. Yeah. And it's just, little things that happen with them in their relationship. Right. And and Paris, Texas was one that I used to play in my college dorm just as atmosphere, because the Ry Cooder soundtrack was just amazing.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because like the soundtrack for this, I saw this movie when it came out in the theater, and I never went back to see it again. I was kind of like, I don't want to see it again because I had such like an amazing experience seeing it for the first time. I was afraid if I saw it again, it would taint it. Yeah. Which it kind of did when I watched it the other night, because it's like, I
think we're older and more cynical too, and it's like I don't know, it's interesting, and I'm still trying to process exactly how I felt watching it. Yeah.
But I have the soundtrack for this, so when the movie started, I was like, I knew like Wenn das Kind war, I knew it all. Like it's just like, right, yeah. That's the scene that this song is in. Yeah. But it's a really beautiful film, and there's a lot of cool stuff in it. I love like the camera just glides and it kind of floats, and the camera work itself has like a very angelic feel to it. Yeah. And I love how all the angels were sort of always perched like birds. Like they're sitting around the library, sitting on ledges. They're always sitting on, occasionally they're not. They're actually touching people, but
and they're all like hang out. They like live at the library.
Right.
It's weird.
Right.
It's cool.
And I also remember like when I saw this originally, I had a long coat, I had a ponytail, so it's sort of like the angel uniform. It was like I ran with a gang. We all look like that. It's just kind of dopey. But it's like, oh yeah, this is cool. It's a movie about angels that look like us.
Yeah, and he falls in love with those aerialist trapeze artists who goes to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds concerts. It's pretty cool.
Right. See, now I also thought like, and especially when I saw you this morning, it kind of reminded me like you're kind of lanky, you got the long hair. It's like, oh, he picked this because he's kind of like John has a Nick Cave physical vibe going.
I definitely like Nick Cave. Also, the other band that played was Crime and the City Solution, which was also featured on the Until the End of the World soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Another one of his guys. But he always talks also about how he loves to have pinball machines in his movies and record players. And the one movie he did what was that? He did The Scarlet Letter. And it was one period piece that he did, and he said it was miserable. He realized his lesson learned was he should never make a movie that he can't have a pinball machine or a record player.
Oh, really?
Like, period pieces are not his thing. But getting back to Wings of Desire, it's like even becoming much more hyper aware of sort of the somewhat ridiculousness of some of this poetry that's going through people's heads. And feeling like some scenes definitely went on longer, and I would have edited it maybe a little bit shorter. I still felt some of that magic when I watched it, and by the end of it, I actually was really excited about filmmaking again. It had
really?
It
Nice,
made me
nice.
because of just the way some of these shots that he composed, and there's a really wild one where Cassiel and two angels are talking. He's talking about how he's like ready to give it up and he wants to be human, and it just kind of the shot tracks off to the side to see these soldiers and tracks back, and all of a sudden he's in the guy's arms, and it was just really unexpected, really wild. And some of and I have to say, they remade this movie with Nick Cage,
right?
And I was so horrified I never watched it.
I've never seen it either.
So I don't know, maybe, but I can't imagine how you could. What was great about this movie couldn't be translated, I don't think, into an American film. I mean, it's in my mind it's flawed, but it still has that magical appeal, and there's something about it that connected with me and really helped. It made me excited about making movies.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a side effect I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
So,
no, I didn't. And I mean, it felt like I remember. It's like I was really happy I started it as early as I did, because it is a long movie. Yeah. And there was definitely some moments that dragged on. And I also think there's a lot in it that, as an American, I'm probably missing. It's very German. You know, I think for the German audience, there's probably a whole nother layer that it's beyond me. Yeah. And maybe maybe that's the stuff that I'm thinking I would cut out. But I still feel like it holds up, as a really, really strong piece of art and a strong piece of directing from one of my favorite directors.
Yeah. Well, it's very meditative. Yeah. It's not. Don't check this movie out if you're looking for a heavy plot.
No, you sit down in a really comfy chair, you have a glass of wine, and keep the bottle close by.
Oh, see, that's the problem. That's the problem. I made popcorn. Oh, yeah, it's not.
No, this is not a beer and popcorn. This is like a glass of wine, or maybe
cheese.
Cheese,
wine and cheese.
And you have to. And I watched on my big screen downstairs. I mean, it's just you really have to. Yeah. And to be honest, it's not. I think I have to see Paris, Texas again, but my favorite DP that he works with a lot is actually Robbie Mueller, who shot Kings of the Road and Paris, Texas, and a lot of his other stuff, which I just think is. I also do a lot of cinematography, and he is one of my absolute favorites. It's just amazing.
Well, this was shot by Henri Alekan, who was 77 when he shot this. Yeah. Who also shot Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. So. That's kind of like
not too shabby.
No, and it's also kind of an amazing testament that he can get somebody who's 77 to I'll come shoot your movie, right? So. But there's there's cool stuff. I love the little kids that only the kids could see the angels. Yeah. And then when Bruno Ganz becomes human, the first people that encounter him are kids. So there's that second of where you're thinking like, wait, is he human or is he still just an angel and only the kids can see him? But then like a minute or two later, he has his first interaction with it.
And the kids, I thought, they definitely had some of the best lines and some of the best thoughts going through their head. And I thought, and again, this is I think the playfulness that Wenders shows in a lot of his in Paris, Texas, the play between the father and the kid in Paris, Texas. What's his name? Harry Dean Stanton. Yeah. And the little boy is some of my favorite parts. And there's a great movie that he did also called Alice in the Cities. And it's, again, this sort of wanderer, his relationship with this young girl and it's this playfulness with the sort of the children that he captures really well. And I feel like that was a really strong aspect of it. And I think just that if I was going to say what maybe rubbed me a little bit the wrong way was just the heavy-handed poetry. It was a bit too heavy. Yeah. And if that was softened up a bit, that would have been my suggestion. But still.
Well, I had a few things that rubbed me the wrong way, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But this is a movie that has kids and adults in it, and so kids should drink honest tea because nature made it right. We put it in a bottle. Refreshingly honest. HonestTea.com. Go to honesttea.com to find a distributor near you. But for the adults who are in Wings of Desire, we also have a sponsor today, Hilliard's Beer, brewed and canned in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, but drunk everywhere. Visit their tap room Thursday through Sunday. You can get more info on them at hilliardsbeer.com.
I can't see you, but I know you're here. feel it. You've been hanging around since I got here. I wish I could see your face. Just look into your eyes and tell you how good it is to be here. Just to touch something. See, that's cold. I feel good. Here, to smoke. Have coffee. And if you do it together, it's fantastic.
That I kind of didn't get. And, here's the sad thing. You mentioned the Nicolas Cage remake.
Yeah.
I bet you every issue I had with this movie, they addressed in that movie. And,
well, the romance happens, in the last quarter of the movie. I mean, he doesn't become human until, almost the end.
Right.
I'm sure that happens probably almost the first thing.
No, I bet it doesn't.
And she's a surgeon. She's not an aerialist.
Oh, is she really? She's a surgeon?
I think so.
Oh, that's funny. I thought it was too easy to become a human. It was just like, all right, well.
It's as easy as jumping off the building, I suppose.
Is it? He just kind of decides, I want to be a human.
I mean, he's been there since the dawn of time, since before bipeds.
Right. But it's so to me, it was well, why haven't you done this yet? And because there's nothing that stopped him, right? Or did I miss something?
I think it was. I mean, a big part of it was he fell in love with. He saw this woman. It was the magic moment. He knew she was the one.
But he seemed bored with being an angel from the beginning of the movie. So it's sort of like there seemed to be nothing that was holding him back from becoming human.
Yeah.
And there was never anything. Well, if you become a human, here's what you're going to lose. It was just sort of like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting. But for me, I felt like he was someone. He was kind of a lost angel, and he kind of found out what he wanted to do.
Are you saying he's Satan?
He's alive. And he when he saw this aerialist, that's when he knew that he was ready to take the plunge. And
yeah. All right.
Take off his armor.
I did love that.
Yeah.
That he gets hit in the head with his armor. And I also love that he sold it.
Yeah.
For money. That was the way he could make money.
And
he took it to a pawn shop.
Peter Fox, you got taken, man. I got $500.
Right. Yeah. And then he used to be an angel. That was a great bit too. Yeah. What about, was there purpose to them being angels? Did they serve any? Are they supposed to be comforting people? Because they seem really bad at it if that's what their job was.
That's a good point, because it seems like they're just listening in to kind of see what's going on. But there is that one guy in this. The one time they show that they do comfort them is, or a couple times. The one would be in the subway with this guy who's super depressed and he's worried, and then the guy puts his hand on his shoulder, and all of a sudden he's thinking, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's this, and my mother was right.
Yeah, his mother was right.
It was kind of funny, actually.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the guy, the jumper, who's just fed up, and the angel goes to try to comfort him, and he fails.
Right.
And which I thought was a really nice moment,
too.
But a lot of it was just, it was just them kind of hovering. I mean, I guess just watching out for us. That was the whole point, without too many instances where they're interacting.
Yeah. I thought the guy who jumped, I wished, you always hear these stories about the people that have survived jumping, that they go as soon as they jumped, they were regretting that they had jumped. Yeah. That would have been great to hear his thoughts, as he was going down.
He does do something like that, doesn't he?
No, he's because the angel screams no.
But the guy says, I think, okay, I'm going to do it now, but why? I think it was, but why was his last thing.
I just wanted to hear him on the way, as he left the way. Oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
So.
There was, I feel like in that there was some kind of last minute, but why? Confusion. He was just done with it.
Yeah.
And the angel's thoughts were just more thoughts in his head. But
yeah. So speaking of the ennui that everyone in the movie had, the poetic and philosophical sort of, everyone was amazingly gifted with thought, better than I am.
Yeah.
I also found it odd that they wanted to be human, because seriously, what a miserable lot all of these people seem to be. There's not one happy person in the bunch, and the idea of I want to go down there and be part of that. I was just really, because no one you're looking at's having a good time.
I mean, they lived in this black and white world too, and they didn't. I think it was that sense of experience. But yeah, Peter Falk was the first one who was yeah, man, you got to come down here for coffee and cigarettes.
Right.
That's the world's got to offer. And just so he's desperate to find some coffee and cigarettes.
Right.
But yeah, if there was, it would be nice to have seen them interacting, in some more with people who I see what you're saying.
It's like I know Germany can be depressing, but come on, not that depressing.
I think that the circus was the place that were.
She was miserable.
She was miserable, but when they were performing for the kids and what she was doing, and it's true, she was miserable because
she was contemplating suicide.
Well, that's another reason I was like, well, is that why maybe he's going to come down there and try to save her? I don't know. That was going through my head, but
we can go to clubs together and listen to depressing music.
Let's go see Nick Cave and That's like, that's like going to see the Go-Go's in Germany. It's like. Those
were the only thoughts I really had about it. But it was really fun to rewatch it.
Yeah.
It was like, and I'm thrilled that it reinvigorated you to go make movies.
It brought back some of that same inspiration. Yeah. But again, it's definitely not one of those movies that I would recommend to everybody.
Yeah.
But for that, if it's the right person in the right mood, it's just something that's so unique.
Yeah.
And especially for me, I saw it, when I was a junior in high school, and I really hadn't, I probably the day before I might have watched 16 Candles. And so it was like just a slap. Like, I think it's funny because I went to go watch Siskel and Ebert review it on YouTube. And I think the other movies that were being reviewed were like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and, what was it? It was like was it Wesley Snipes? Was he around back then? I can't remember. Something else that was pretty forgettable and so different. So it was just such a vastly different movie than everything than was around there. So it was really nice to kind of shake me out of, the stuff that was so accessible and realize, wow, like where are more films like this?
Right.
So that in that way, the film was one of the most influential films of my life.
Cool. So the big question.
Yeah.
How did your date go?
There were more to come. It was good.
Oh, you guys aren't married, are you?
No, we didn't get married, but we spent high school together, and we definitely saw a lot more, crazy movies. Probably the one that was a bit more of a failure. And I think where we took Awkward to a new level was we rented Eraserhead and watched that together, and that was we came out of Wings of Desire feeling we were in New York City and it was really fun, and we were both felt, there were so many ideas in our heads, whereas after Eraserhead we both felt like we just needed to go to bed, or like,
we need a break.
We needed to go.
We need a break from one another. All right. Okay. Well, cool. Thanks, John. And where can people follow you on Twitter?
At Jeffcoat, Jeffcoat.
There you go. You can check out John's exploits there and find out when his new movie is going to be coming out. So, Big in Japan.
Big in Japan.
I almost said Back in Japan. That'll be the sequel, I guess, right? So, once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Honest Tea and Hilliard's Beer. And until next time, remember, it's never too late to start thinking about the past.